Hi everyone, and welcome back to the second edition of Ask Matthew Anything.
You know, I really thought Tabumafix Mabit Fatil Samalabid would catch on. I think the acronym proved to be a little inconvenient, so...
A little hard to say, so we naturally shortened that to Ask Matthew Anything, the segment where you can ask me anything. But nothing weird, guys, come on.
Yeah, keep it real, guys.
Keep it real. Alright, so we got a lot of great questions last time, nothing weird. So Chris has taken the liberty to go and comb through them and present them to me, and I will go ahead and answer them. So, let's get started.
All right. First up, we have a question from Spencer Ray.
Okay.
Spencer says, I've got a question. Did you ever bring up your webcomic when you were meeting with Nintendo?
I like this question. This is a good question. It's fun. Well, not exactly, but there is sort of an interesting story there that I've never fully revealed. And I've always kind of wanted to, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I forgot about it. I didn't directly bring up Brawl in the Family when talking to Nintendo, because I wasn't really sure what they think of it, if they would think like, oh, this is kind of weird, these drawings and making fun of our games and stuff, or what. But I can confirm that while I was doing the orders for the Brawl in the Family Kickstarter 2 and 3, the full collection, that one of the labels was directly from someone that worked at Nintendo of America. In fact, it was so-and-so, courtesy of Nintendo of America. So not only did someone that works at Nintendo, support the Kickstarter, but apparently they ordered it through Nintendo of America, and I'm not sure if, what that means exactly, but I guess I'm almost positive they know about it. I just, I haven't actually directly asked them about it.
That really shows that you're going somewhere, Matthew. Or that you've been somewhere.
I've been somewhere, and I'm no longer going there. Alright, I'm getting depressed, so let's move on to the next one.
Okay. We have some Tadpole Trouble questions in here.
Cool.
Dr. Pumpkins says, I have 2 questions. Number 1, will you release the music for the secret level? And number 2, what was that thing crying in the background?
Well, Doctor, to answer your first question, the secret level was actually, that was our Kickstarter backer, final reward tier, where the top backer could put their own song into the game. His name was Duncan, and he backed the game at the highest reward level, and he made that great song, and in fact, not only that, he actually conceptualized the level in general. He said, I want this stage to have this squid rising up and shocking things, and the creatures kind of turning against you. So that was all really cool. I think I should contact Duncan to see if we can put that up on our YouTube channel, because I forgot that we didn't actually have that as part of the soundtrack, because it's mainly because it's a little bit of a weird kind of gray area for me, because I didn't actually write it. I would feel a little weird kind of lumping it in with all my songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll check with him and see if he'd be cool with us just putting his song on the channel for people to see. I think it's been long enough that it's not as much a spoiler, unless I just spoiled it for people, so in which case I'm sorry. As for that thing crying in the background, yeah, that was just my baby. We can't always find a babysitter at the best times, so sometimes you guys are just gonna have to deal with a little bit of fussitude. Hopefully it didn't freak you guys out too much. I think we released that one coming up around Halloween. It was not supposed to be some sort of weird creepypasta.
It was a little spooky.
Podcast.
I think it was a little spooky.
It was a little bit of a wailing. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually in the bits about the Zero Escape series, it kind of meshed together with some of the music that was
oh yeah,
scary.
So it could. All right, well, I'm glad it all worked out.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's not as much wailing this time around, because the number of babies has doubled since then.
It's gonna be a pretty scary household, Matthew. Crawling with them.
Telling me. Mm-hmm.
Coming out the woodwork. PokeLink asks, what inspired you to start Brawl in the Family?
Well, it started off as doodles, and I've kind of told this story before, how I was kind of doodling in class, and I just uploaded them, and people seemed to like them. But in terms of inspiration for the comic itself, I think a big part of it was that I just hadn't seen many comics that had taken the approach from, the character's perspective. This is Kirby, who's pretty much acting like Kirby, and it's just these sort of silly things happen.
Right.
a lot of webcomics in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, kind of leading up to that point, had sort of been more like, we can do whatever we want because we don't have to be syndicated.
Oh.
So they're aiming a little bit more, they were more adult-oriented. And I didn't really want to do that because, I was a big Nintendo fan, and that doesn't really mesh with their characters, It kind of extends beyond webcomics. You'll look at, like, Newgrounds or something from the 90s, and there's so many, like, flash videos of, like, Mario shooting Bowser with a Tommy gun or whatever, and it's blood. It's like, there's the MS Paint blood spray effect, or it's like the, what is that thing, like the airbrush thing, and it's all, it's obvious what they did there. Anyway, I didn't want to do anything like that. I wanted to do something where it was, like, the characters acting more or less in character, give or take a Waluigi. And
or a snake,
and seeing where it goes from there. So that was kind of the main idea behind the comic.
Yeah.
So it was really just make a Nintendo comic that still feels true to those worlds.
Dorko for you asks, this is all really cool to hear about. The question I'd like to ask is, were there any funny bugs that popped up during the making of Tadpole Trouble?
Well, there are definitely plenty of bugs that we had to go in and squish. One of the most persistent ones I'm thinking about is one where Baton would spin over and over, like you would press the tail button, and she would just spin constantly, like a propeller. And we actually called it the infinite tail glitch because of after the kind of infamous Ocarina of Time infinite sword glitch, I think it's called. That one was persistent. That one kept coming up. Oh, every now and then there was during the early days of development, there would be this weird issue with her jumping arc, where you would hit a symbol, and she would just sort of slowly glide forward and out of the water, and like gradually turn, and then start like doing that thing where she reaches the top of the screen and then she's at the bottom, and then she just kind of kept going through the screen over and over, like one of those old TVs where the picture keeps going up, down and up and down and up. We got rid of that one though. That shouldn't be in there anymore. Those are a couple that came to mind. But yeah, nothing too insane from what I remember.
We have a few questions here from Jagcop, Mr. T, and Tempest Blazer. They're all curious as to the status of the European Wii U release of Tadpole Trouble. Do you have anything to any light to shed on whether Tadpole Trouble will come to Europe?
This is one that we've been telling people for a while. We're working on it. There's several steps involved in this process that ended up being more difficult than we expected. One of them is that we have to actually translate the entire manual. Not the game itself, but the e-manual, which means we'd have to hire someone that speaks French and English and that can, do a good job translating. Another issue with that is that we have to get approved by the European Ratings Board. Obviously, the game's, it's not going to be anything higher than their equivalent of the E, but it's, it's another step in the process. And we have to go through the whole the lot check process with the European version to make sure that it works okay on their systems and everything, because that the Wii U is not region free, so it's a little bit trickier than I initially anticipated, and I unfortunately I can't confirm anything at this point, but we're still looking into it, and we're hoping that we can have an answer for you soon. That said, the Steam version is still available, in all regions, so we'll keep an eye on the Wii U version and keep trying to make it work. But if nothing else, there is always the PC version.
Tempest Blazer had a couple additional questions there. They ask, how did the people aside from Michael Taranto assemble for Tadpole Trouble? And will we get little doodles or mini comics in the middle of podcasts on occasion?
I have been doing art for the podcast, for each of we have like the main cover for each podcast thing. And every now and then an idea will pop in my head. Not necessarily a comic idea, but just like, I don't know, just something completely... It could be anything, really. For instance, I got an idea for a prosecutor in Ace Attorney that I really like. This big guy who's like a boxer. He's also a prosecutor. And I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. So I just sketched him up, and we'll put it in an upcoming episode somewhere. So we are gonna have little bonus art things like that. Not necessarily comics, but just cool little visual things to show. And generally, when we have that, we're gonna link to it. It'll either be very obvious in the podcast, or we'll link to it somewhere, in the description for your viewing enjoyment. As for your other question about Tadpole Trouble's team assembly, that was kind of interesting because Michael and I, neither of us are really programmers. Michael started learning his way around Unity after we got kind of this team together, but prior to that, he was more of a businessman. I was kind of the artist and composer, and we started up in the Louisiana Tech Park, which has this incubation program for indie game developers called the Level Up Labs. And I go into detail a little bit about this on the Kickstarter video, but essentially it's a nice little program where people can, that their workers can kind of mentor the up and coming indie teams on how to, do this specific thing, program this, market this, and just generally give them guidance.
Did you select these other people who worked on the game individually, or were they otherwise connected to the Level Up Labs and you kind of meshed into their environment?
Yeah, it was a little of both, actually. Some of them were already working there and kind of had more of a mentor role, and some of them were maybe working on other teams. For instance, we had people that have worked on Road Redemption by Pixel Dash Studios, and Josh Hano and his team are working on Nefarious. I'm also working on that. So there's kind of a lot of crossover between these teams. One programmer might work on 3 different games. So it let us have a good pool of talented people to pick from, for actually hiring, and paying. So that's the long and short of it.
Tasteless Sandwiches asks, since the game is made in Unity, is there a chance for Tadpole Trouble to be ported to the new 3DS at least? I love the composer mode, but since most of the day I'm out of my home, being able to mess around with it on the go would be great.
I love the 3DS. It's probably my favorite console system of this generation. But that said, we checked on how feasible that might be. And the main issue we're coming across with that is the general resolution of the screen. We would take a screenshot from the game and shrink it down to the size and resolution of the 3DS screen. And Baton ended up getting very tiny. He's a very small tadpole. And it got a little worrisome because you just the way the game is designed, you kind of need that specific space and that specific resolution to really have it be playable. But there is a caveat here. We recently just announced that Tadpole Trouble was coming to the mobile market. And, on the one hand, you could say, well, the phone isn't really bigger than a 3DS, but at the same time, that sharper resolution really helped us, make that transition a lot more smoothly. So the good news is we'll still have a way to have the game playable on the go, just not quite on the 3DS. But that said, we're certainly not ruling out the 3DS or any Nintendo future, handhelds or the Switch or anything in terms of future development. We're definitely looking at all Nintendo systems seriously.
Adam Harris asks, as an indie developer, what would you like from the NX that would make development better or easier?
I think the biggest headache with development on a console, and for Tadpole Trouble, was dealing with the lot check process, which is when the game was finished, but it went through bug testing, and it just there was a lot of waiting involved. You'd have to send it off, you'd have to wait for them to play through the game, which would take 2 to 3 weeks, and then they would send back a report to about what the issues were, and then you'd have to fix them, and then you could resend it, and they'd have to play through it again, wait several weeks, and that's kind of why it got delayed so much near the end of the life cycle, even though the game was like 99.5% done. I would love to see some sort of streamlining of that process in particular for the Switch. Otherwise, the actual hardware development element of things, it went pretty smoothly. The Wii U supports Unity, so it didn't really require writing a lot of stuff from scratch, and the Switch will as well. So if the Switch is a little beefier and has that extra muscle, so where we don't have to compromise some of the images and stuff, we'd be fine and dandy. So we're excited for the Switch for sure.
8-Bit Templar asks, might you bring back Comic Talk? Obviously, you're not making the comic anymore, so you couldn't talk about the most recent ones like you used to, but you could bring back the random button or just handpick a couple you like to discuss. I always like to hear about the process behind the comic and your perspectives on the finished product personally. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Oh, that's an interesting question. What do you think, Chris? You think that would make for some a nice little segment?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a good idea. It would just take a few minutes here and there to just do like one random comic per week or something.
Yeah,
I think that could be fun.
Yeah, we might work it into a future podcast, either via the random button or like you said, a specific one that might have kind of an interesting story behind it.
Yeah.
Because obviously we did not. We weren't able to talk about every comic in the series, so there's plenty still to discuss there.
Yeah, good suggestion, 8-Bit. Suspicious Mr. Guy asks, Do you plan on making the songs able to be shared through the Steam Workshop? It would be very helpful.
Well, we're looking into that right now, actually. We're checking with hiring some outside help to help us get that implemented. And we should have an answer for you very soon. So stay tuned.
Micah Burgess asks, is that Burgess?
Burgess. I think it's Burgess. I know Meredith Burgess is the guy that played Mick, Rocky's trainer, in the Rocky movies.
Okay.
So.
Well, Micah, I'm going to call you Micah Burgess.
All right.
What were your favorite bestiary entries to create?
Oh, those are pretty fun. I think I enjoyed the duck one because we had an 8-bit duck as well as the regular duck. So the duck as a whole was, a big Duck Hunt reference. So I like sneaking in a few of those little nods to my childhood in that one.
Sharkbait the Dork asks, I've been playing Tadpole Trouble so much, and I've gotten the soundtrack off Amazon. It's such a great game. My questions are, what song was the most challenging for you to complete? And if that isn't your favorite song from the game, what is? Personally, mine is Thunder Creek.
Well, Sharkbait, thank you for supporting the game and the soundtrack. I appreciate it. Hardest song, I think Midnight Bayou went through the most changes. And in terms of from the conception phase to the finish phase, I think I spent the most time on Midnight Bayou. Piranha Jungle was also very difficult to nail down because it's a kind of song that I've never really written before. Prior versions of that song were they just weren't really working. I wanted something kind of unique and different, and I ended up doing that kind of what it is now, that kind of funky sort of South American style, dance song. I'm not even sure how to describe it, but that doom 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 doom. It's almost like a samba or something.
Bossa Nova, maybe.
But Midnight Bayou, it actually is one of my favorites. In fact, it might be my favorite. I'm really proud of all the vocal songs in the game in particular, but I think that one, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it was a kind of a complex song. It's probably one of the trickier ones to write, but I think it came together nicely. So I'm happy with that one.
Zainab Abdullahi asks, question, what is a game series you could never get into?
To keep this interesting, I think I'm going to limit it to Nintendo series because there are actually a lot of modern games I'm just not very excited to play. A lot of third-person action games. As far as Nintendo series, I was going to say Fire Emblem, but I have gotten into Fire Emblem recently. And Advance Wars. In fact, I really like Advance Wars. I was playing it today. I haven't played Chibi Robo, but can't say I haven't gotten into it. So, you know what? I'm going to cheat and not do a Nintendo one. I'm going to say, and this might give me some ire, Kingdom Hearts.
Ooh, controversial.
Here they come. Yeah, and it's weird because I like Final Fantasy and I like Disney, but I don't know, like steak and ice cream, I don't want them together. It's a little weird. Yeah, I played a couple hours of the first Kingdom Hearts. Maybe I need to give it a second chance, but wasn't quite doing it for me. Although I did like the presentation. I like how they had a lot of the voice actors and stuff from the different movies and such. But yeah, I know that series has quite the following, so I guess I should just leave it at that.
All right, and lastly, Mr. T has a question for me. He says, and just to have a question for Chris, what's your favorite Irio quote?
Oh.
Well, I have to say, my favorite thing about Irio is actually the audio version you did. Mm-hmm. I think that gave a lot of life to the comic. That is pretty much gold all the way through, I'd say.
Oh, thanks.
Curiously, the line that sticks out of my head is probably... and the delivery is so weird, and at first I didn't like it. I was like, that's dumb, Matthew. But that specific the delivery of that line has stuck in my head for a very long time. So I'm gonna have to say that's my favorite, I guess.
You like that little uncertain bit at the end. It grew on you after over time.
Irio.
Yes.
I'm glad you like the Irio.
Yeah, maybe another Irio comic should happen.
I did make that Irio commercial that was for Kickstarter backers only for I believe the first book, maybe the second book. I should probably, we could probably release that now. I think it's been long enough. I think the statute of limitations on Irio is probably starting to expire or whatever.
I think so.
Well, thanks everybody for all the questions.
And be sure to leave lots of extra questions for next time.
Yeah, leave them all over the place.
Yeah, and remember, no weird questions, please.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Come on. All right, until next time, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Chris.
And have a good day. I don't know why I said have a good day. I mean, it's polite, but it's not really entertaining. I don't think people are tuning in to hear me be polite. Like, hello, sir. Hello. Please listen to our podcast, and I will enjoy it indubitably.